In this tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at editing this image right here. Now, the method I've been running with now for about the last year or so is the lights off method. This will help your camera get correct white balance, and it allows for a more natural look. I personally prefer the lights off method. I'm always going to tell you to make sure that you're talking with the realtor first before you go with this, because realtors automatically assume that if you don't have the lights on, that you're not going to have enough light, and they might not understand that we're lighting everything anyway. But the advantage to using the lights off method, which I'm going to show you in this particular tutorial, is that you are able to use the natural light coming in as part of your light source. Whereas if we're using the natural light with tungsten lighting and other lamps within the room, we're going to basically have to overpower those with flash. Whereas I typically I'm using flash for fill light and for the window views. So if you take a look at this image right here, we have a nice cathedral ceiling. We have these big bay windows right here that's pretty much bringing in light. Yes, it is being backlit from where our camera view is, but that's why in this particular situation I'm using an AD200 on a light stand with a shoot-through umbrella to light the foreground, and then I am coming over in this particular situation and lighting this side of the room to illuminate the left side. If you can tell, see, I'm holding the Godox V1 flash. All right, so we have, again, our ambient layer. So what I'm going to first do with this one, I am going to just put on my initial bump right here. And a couple things that I've done is, instead of using the standard Adobe Color, I'm using Adobe Neutral. And how you find that is come down here to the Browse and select it right here. What that does is it gives you more of a flatter image, because even the Adobe Standard, if you notice, is a little bit more contrasty, and I really don't want to deal with that when I'm blending the flash and the ambient layer. We want to make those adjustments at the very end for the final image. So I'm choosing Adobe Neutral for this one. And then I'm bringing up my shadows pretty much all the way. Depends on the situation. For this example, I'm just going to throw them to 100 to show you what that looks like. But what I'm going to tell you is make all your corrections. Come down here. Make sure, this is another one that I like to do. I'm actually dropping the sharpness now, and from most of my listings, I just over sharpening can start to look really bad. So make sure that you have your profile corrections on. That's going to correct for any distortion and vignetting that your lens may cause, so make sure you check that. And then all you have to do is come over here to the presets and hit the plus sign and hit create preset. Label it something. I'm just labeling mine first bump. That's how I know that that's like the first thing I need to do. You can click here, click or check all, and then hit create. And then it will always be over here, so you don't have to constantly be adjusting all your sliders with every photo, because remember, you need to be quick on site and quick in the editing room. So that's what I did my first bump. Let's come over here and adjust my first flash pop. And again, these are just starting points. You're going to have to tweak them a little bit, but it's going to be way faster. And as you can see, my umbrella was coming through here, but we have a repair layer for that. So we're going to go to the other side and do our flash pop, do our first bump, adjust that exposure down, and this is going to be our repair layer. So I shut the flash off, and you can see that I might not have even needed that umbrella, because this single flash, that V1, and I'm not really sure the power. I get that question a lot is, well, can you talk about what power you were using? And again, it's going to vary depending on the size of the room, what your shutter speed ended up being, and what aperture you're running. You're just going to have to play around with it, how much natural light you have after you dial down your shutter. Dial down your shutter till you get a window view, and then just do trial and error, test it. But once you get going, you're gonna know about how much flash power you're gonna need based on the size of the room and your exposure settings at that time. So it's just trial and error to learn that. And again, I'm going to do my first bump on this one. Make my adjustments. So we're going to highlight each one of these by holding down Command and clicking. We got our left and right flash pops with our repair layer and our ambient layer. Right click edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. So once you have all your layers loaded into Photoshop, you will have your ambient layer sitting on top. If you took your ambient layer first, that's why I say make sure you're always doing your ambient layer first, get that out of the way, dial your shutter up, and then run around and do your flash pops. So simplest way I've found to blend these images together fast and simple is take and shut your ambient layer off. And so you're going to have on top your one flash pop here. We have this one on the left, and all we're going to do, and the bottom one is going to be your repair layer. Don't worry about that one right now. So highlight that first flash layer, come down here to the masking tool right here, just click on that, create a layer mask, and then Command I to invert it. Now we're going to come over here, make sure white is selected, and take our gradient tool and hold anywhere in front of yourself. Just make sure you're in front of the farthest part of your body or your arm right here, because we want to start the blending process right here. Hold down, click, and drag somewhere in the middle of the image and let off. And it will blend it perfectly. It's going to just blend a nice seamless blend between your two flash pops right there. You know what? Now what we're going to do is we're going to take and do that repair layer on the window before we blend in any ambient layer. So we'll come down here to the bottom layer, and we're going to drag it up between that gradient layer and the ambient layer and let off. So we need to get ourselves out of there, so we're just going to do a layer mask, Command I to invert it, make sure white is selected, take our brush tool now, and then we can just slowly just brush out that umbrella reflection out of that window. Simple as that. Now we have a nice clean, evenly lit flash layer. Now we can turn our ambient layer back on. And I am going to actually try to do luminosity mode. I like that. And we're going to drop our opacity to 50%. And we can also paint back in by just doing a layer mask. Don't invert it. Come over here, make sure black is selected, and we can paint back in some of that flash layer, because remember, when we drop that opacity to 50%, we're actually washing out our window view by 50%. And so we're just going to paint back in that flash layer just so that window view is visible. And of course, we had the sun over top here. We have the blinds here, so we have natural haze coming through anyway. So there we go. That is a perfectly blended image. We don't have any unnatural shadows going on anywhere. So I'm going to show you another method, because I do preach a lot of times to stay away from luminosity mode. It'll save you time. So I'm just going to discard this. We're going to start over. So if you're running into a situation where luminosity mode is causing color issues in the shadows or the highlighted areas, which will happen from time to time, you can still do the 50% method, leave it at normal, and what I'm going to do is you're still going to need to do your masking layer there, making sure that, and paint back in your flash. But I'm going to show you another method here real quick, how to get correct color and eliminate color casts. So once that's done, we're going to come down to the bottom layer, right click, flatten image, and now we're going to duplicate this layer, Command J, and then we're going to come up here to filter, blur, and then average. And so what this is doing is taking an average of all the colors, and it should be middle gray if you have a correct white balance across the board. But I can tell that we don't. So what we're going to need to do is going to come down here to our curves adjustment layer. Right here, we're going to choose curves. Click on the middle eyedropper, and then click anywhere in the image. And if you look right here, it looks like it took the reds out and bumped the blues a little bit. So if we shut this middle layer off now, we don't need it, we toggle this on and off, you can tell that it took away some of that red that was coming through. And so now we can flatten that image. Hit OK because we don't need that other layer. Command S to save it, to bring it back into Lightroom. And once it's back into Lightroom, again, I just do my interior final bump, similar to what I do with the initial bump. Created a preset for that. Tweak your exposure. Make sure you watch this tutorial. This is the full tutorial that I created on various lighting techniques and different equipment that I use to light in different situations. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.